The armored doors is open and a wave of stale, cold air sweeps over me as I step into the last fortress. It stands as a grim relic at the edge of civilization, a monolith wrapped in darkness and silence, like a sentinel from another era. In the distance, the cracked, barren earth stretches endlessly, as if the land itself has given up on life. I've seen my share of battlegrounds, places of death and destruction, but nothing like this. Nothing as hollow, as though every ounce of hope or human touch was scoured from the walls long ago. Inside, the lights flicker sporadically, casting uneven shadows that stretch and twist along the corridors. The air is chilled, cutting right to the bone, and each step echoes in the oppressive silence. My boots clank against the steel floor, and the sound feels too loud, too intrusive, as if this place isn't meant to be disturbed. The machinery hums faintly, a broken, intermittent drone that only adds to the sense that this fortress, despite its technology, has become more of a tomb than a refuge. I walk further into the structure, glancing over the bare, reinforced walls. My hand brushes against a series of indentations carved into the steel. Help, don't trust it, and it's already here, are scratched into the surface, desperate words etched with frantic strokes. Each message is incomplete, fragmented, as though the person who wrote them had been interrupted or worse. My grip tightens on my weapon, and I can feel the hairs on the back of my neck rising. I've been a soldier long enough to know that fear can play tricks on the mind. But here, as I take in the sight of abandoned personal belongings scattered along the floor, a torn photograph, a pair of glasses, an old helmet, I can't shake the feeling that these were left behind in a hurry by people who knew they wouldn't be coming back. There's a sense of unfinished lives, of people who went missing without explanation, and the emptiness left in their wake makes me clench my teeth against the chill seeping into my bones. The deeper I go, the stronger the impression that I'm not alone. I catch glimpses of movement out of the corner of my eye, shadows that dart just beyond the reach of the flickering lights. Every so often, a strange noise echoes through the corridors, a faint scraping, a hollow thud, like someone or something shifting just around the next corner. I tell myself it's just a fortress settling, that the place has been left to rot and is naturally decaying. But the explanations sound hollow even in my own head. It feels more alive than dead, as though it's breathing with a life all its own. As I reach what seems to be a central hub, I pause, taking in the sight of the control room. It's cluttered with malfunctioning screens and cracked monitors that buzz erratically, showing flashes of static and fragments of surveillance feeds. There's no sign of anyone, no welcoming committee, just more reminders of the fortress's state of disrepair. Yet, the screens show brief glimpses of movement, an arm, a face, a figure in the darkness that's there 1 second and gone the next. Each time I blink, the face or shadow shifts, like a nightmare trapped just on the edge of vision. I shake my head, trying to dispel the growing sense of dread, but it only tightens its grip. Despite the silence, there's something else here, something lurking just out of sight. The fortress seems determined to keep me on edge. Every time I think I'm starting to get my bearings, something reminds me that I'm still very much alone, and that something might be watching. The lights flicker and hum inconsistently, and sometimes go out entirely, plunging me into temporary darkness. I try to brush it off as faulty equipment, a consequence of years without maintenance, but the faint tapping sounds that echo down the halls don't sound mechanical. I tell myself it's just the pipes or the ducts cooling, the fortress settling, but that line gets harder to believe with each passing hour. I find myself making my way back to the surveillance room, hoping that the screens will give me some sense of control. The flickering monitors cast a dim glow over the room, and I scan through different feeds, one by one. Most of the screens show empty corridors, dark rooms, and silent machinery, but then something catches my eye. In the far corner of one feed, just barely within the camera's view, a shadow flickers past. I stare at it, unblinking, trying to figure out what it could have been. A trick of the light, maybe, or some remnant of static on the screen. I move from feed to feed, hoping to catch another glimpse, and just as I'm about to give up, the same shadow appears again on a different screen, slipping into a corridor that should be empty. My skin prickles, but I force myself to calm down. It's probably nothing, I think. Or if it is something, it's just some harmless intruder, maybe a survivor hiding in this ruin. I head to the area I saw on the monitor. But when I get there, it's empty, the lights flickering as if mocking me. Nothing to see but my own shadow, stretching out across the wall as I stand alone. Back in the surveillance room, I search the drawers for anything useful and come across a thick, dust-covered book. The spine is cracked, the page is stained with blood that's long since dried. Inside, the writing is erratic, scrawled hastily in places, as though the person who wrote it was in a panic. The entries start innocuously enough, detailing shifts in the humdrum life of being stationed here, but soon the tone shifts. The handwriting becomes shakier, the entries shorter, and the words hint at paranoia. Mentions of crew members disappearing, strange noises that no one could identify, an unexplainable feeling of being watched. I read on, my stomach twisting. The entries described strange figures seen in the shadows, footsteps in empty hallways, and whispers that echoed from nowhere. The last entry, scratched hurriedly across the page, is barely legible. But the words hit me like a punch to the gut. The enemy isn't outside. It's already here. I close the book slowly, feeling the weight of those words settle over me. The fortress feels smaller, tighter, like the walls are pressing in around me. As I patrol later, trying to shake off the eerie feeling the logbook has left me with, I catch sight of something in the distance. It's a figure, barely discernible, standing at the end of a darkened corridor, just out of reach of the light. My heart pounds as I move forward, cautiously, each step echoing louder than the last. But as I approach, the figure vanishes, melting into the shadows like smoke. I hurry to the spot where it stood, my eyes scanning the walls and floor, and that's when I see it, a strange, twisted mark smeared across the wall. It's unlike anything I've seen before, alien in form, almost like a distorted handprint with too many fingers, trailing off as if the thing that made it was in a rush to get away. A deep, primal unease fills me. I don't know what I saw or what left that mark, but every instinct I have is screaming at me that it doesn't belong here, that I don't belong here. The fortress, with its silence and shadows, has turned hostile, as though it's harboring something ancient and malevolent that has been here long before I arrived. I continue my rounds, but every shadow seems sharper, every flicker of light more menacing. I can feel eyes on me, pressing in from all sides, following my movements through the maze of corridors. My mind races, replaying each strange encounter, each flickering shadow, each bloodstained warning in that logbook. The thought gnaws at me, refusing to let go. Whatever is inside this fortress isn't just in my head. It's real, and it's watching me. Sleep has become a luxury I can't afford. Every time I close my eyes, I'm bombarded by the incessant sounds, whispers that creep up from nowhere, a low hum that feels like it's pressing into my skull. I try to ignore it, tell myself it's just the wind or the fortress settling. But the noises have a rhythm, a cadence, as though they're speaking in some language I can't understand. When exhaustion finally pulls me under, the dreams are worse than the waking world. In them, something slithers through my mind, prying, digging, as if it's trying to find a way in. I wake up in cold sweats, heart pounding, the walls feeling like they're closing in. The shadows seem to stretch and bend, clinging to the corners, merging into shapes that shouldn't exist. It's only glimpses, twisted figures that disappear the second I try to focus, faces half-formed, as though emerging from a nightmare. But every now and then, one of those faces feels painfully familiar. I catch sight of a jawline, the tilt of a nose, a flash of recognition that's gone too quickly to grasp. Old friends, comrades long gone, faces of people I knew and lost. But here they're distorted, twisted with vacant eyes and open mouths that look like they're screaming, although no sound comes out. I try to reach out for help, but every attempt to send a signal, to contact the outside world, is met with silence. The lines are dead, or perhaps they're blocked. It doesn't matter. I'm on my own here. The realization settles over me like a weight, pressing down with the knowledge that whatever's in here with me is all I have for company. The feeling of isolation is absolute, gnawing at my nerves, making every sound and shadow 10 times worse. I'm completely cut off, and the walls of the fortress seem to echo that back to me, amplifying my fear. As I wander deeper, things start to feel wrong, more wrong than I thought possible. One corridor twists in a way that shouldn't be possible, curving at an angle that makes no sense. I try to keep moving, ignoring the feeling that the walls are shifting around me, but each step feels heavier, like gravity itself is playing tricks. I enter a room that's freezing cold, the kind of cold that cuts through flesh, despite the fact that this area should be climate-controlled. Shadows here are sharper, thicker, seeming to linger in unnatural shapes, and I can feel something watching me, something patient waiting. I'm no longer sure what's real. Did I really see those twisted figures in the corners of my vision? Were those whispers calling my name, or just my mind unraveling under the pressure? The fortress feels alive, breathing with every flicker of the lights, every echo that bounces back at me from the cold walls. It's as if it's trying to seep into my mind, like it's prying open some unseen door in my head, pushing its way in. I force myself to keep moving, to fight the dread pooling in my stomach, but it's becoming harder to trust my own senses. I see things I know aren't there, a glimpse of myself, staring back from around a corner, face blank and hollow, or a flash of something crawling along the walls, vanishing the second I turn. I can feel it inside me, an invasive presence that's taken root, like this place is weaving itself into my thoughts, twisting them, making me doubt every step, every sound, every breath. The fortress feels more like a predator than a place, a living thing that's wrapped itself around me, feeding off my fear, driving me deeper into its shadows. And as I move through it, I know one thing for certain. Whatever's here won't let me leave. I've spent days, or maybe it's hours, trying to keep myself together, moving through the fortress like a ghost. But it's here with me, not hiding anymore, no longer just a whisper in the dark or a shadow in the corner of my eye. It shows itself now, a figure standing ahead, one moment solid, the next shifting and flickering like it's made of smoke. I freeze, heart pounding, and for a brief, sickening second, I think I recognize the face. It looks like an old friend, someone I lost years ago on a mission gone wrong. But the eyes, they're hollow, dark and bottomless. And the smile is all wrong, twisted in a way that no human mouth could manage. The figure shifts, its face flickering between people I know, each one distorted, each one a grotesque mockery of someone I once trusted. Its movements are fluid, like it's made of shadows and memories, twisting and morphing in ways that defy reality. Every time I blink, it's someone else, a brother in arms, an old lover, my commanding officer, all twisted versions, each one smiling with that same malevolent gleam. The sight of it curdles in my gut, and a sick realization settles over me. This thing has been feeding off my mind, using my memories against me, drawing from every fear and doubt I've ever had. The creature's voice is a low, grating whisper, but it sounds like 100 voices overlapping, each one familiar, every word laced with malice. It tells me I was never alone here, that it's been with me since the moment I stepped inside, winding itself into my thoughts, creeping into the empty spaces of my mind, taking hold. I stagger back, feeling a sharp, cold fear slice through me as I realize that every strange noise, every glimpse of movement, every face I thought I saw was all it, slowly tightening its grip, feeding on my terror, embedding itself deeper. It leans closer, the edges of its form shifting, dissolving, then reforming into something even more grotesque. "You came here looking for safety," it whispers, voice rippling with something cold and cruel. But safety was never an option. This fortress was mine long before you arrived. It's been mine since the first of your kind dared to build here. The words sink in, cold and final, and a horrifying truth unfolds before me. This thing wasn't just haunting the fortress. It is the fortress, a presence that seeped into every wall, every corridor. It's been here, lying in wait, consuming every person sent here, turning them into part of itself, leaving behind empty shells. The creature steps forward, and I can feel it pressing into my thoughts, prying, peeling back layers of my mind. I see horrific visions flashing before me. Cities in flames, humanity fractured and scattered, soldiers driven to madness, screaming in terror as the creature takes hold of them one by one. In each image, I see it worming its way into their minds, feeding on their fears until there's nothing left but twisted reflections of the people they used to be. This was its plan all along. Not to destroy humanity outright, but to break us from within, fortress by fortress, mind by mind, turning our strongest safeholds into breeding grounds for despair and death. I try to fight back, my body trembling with a primal instinct to survive, but it's like wrestling with shadows. The creature seeps into my thoughts, filling every corner with visions of horror, twisting reality around me. I see my own face, hollow and lost, staring back at me as though I'm already one of the empty shells it leaves behind. My mind feels split, like it's unraveling, and I can feel it clawing at the core of who I am, digging for whatever shred of humanity I have left, something to destroy, to corrupt. But a part of me fights, clings to the thought of resisting, to the idea that I'm more than just another victim in its twisted game. I try to hold on, to remember who I am, but doubt is eating away at me. What's the point of fighting something that's already inside my head, something that knows my thoughts, my fears, every weakness? The creature's voice coils around me, whispering that there's no escape, that surrender is inevitable. It shows me images of myself broken, lost, a part of the fortress, just another hollow echo in its endless, empty halls. The doubt sinks in deeper, whispering that maybe it would be easier to let go, to let the darkness consume me, to stop fighting and accept the inevitable. But somewhere, buried beneath the fear and the doubt, there's a spark, a reminder that giving in means becoming another shadow, another broken figure haunting the next person to walk these halls. The creature feels my resistance, and its face twists with something dark, something angry, its form flickering wildly as it tries to press deeper, to make me give up. With a surge of determination, I push back, forcing myself to remember who I am, that I'm more than just another victim. I clench my fists, grounding myself, refusing to give in to the terror it's trying to drown me in. I don't know if I can win, if I can escape this thing's hold on me, but I know one thing. I'm not going to go down without a fight. I'll hold on to my last shreds of self, even if it means tearing myself apart, refusing to become another face in its collection of twisted memories. As I struggle against it, the creature's form begins to waver, its confidence shaking as it realizes I'm not as broken as it thought. For the first time, I see something other than malice in its shifting, distorted faces, a hint of frustration, maybe even fear. I know, deep down, that I won't make it out of this fortress. The creature has taken too much of me, burrowed too deep. But if I'm going down, I'm not going down quietly. The enemy may have slipped past every line of defense, infesting every dark corner, but I won't let it spread beyond this cursed place. I brace myself, my body heavy but resolute, knowing that what I do next could be the last thing I ever do. My mind races, piecing together a desperate plan. The fortress has a failsafe, a mechanism designed for last resort destruction, meant to keep our technology and secrets out of enemy hands. It's a cold, terrifying thought, but it's all I have. Better to bury this place, this thing, in the ground forever than to risk it spreading, infecting someone else, some other place. I make my way through the corridors, avoiding shadows, knowing it's there, watching, preparing to stop me. As I reach the central console, I feel it press against my thoughts, twisting them, trying to distract me with memories that aren't mine. It pulls images from my mind and warps them, flashes of home and loved ones, distorted and monstrous. My fingers shake as I work, every part of my mind screaming against the assault. I punch in the codes, barely holding my focus as visions of horror and despair flash through my mind. Relentless. The creature appears, slipping out of the shadows, solidifying into something grotesque, a blend of every familiar face it's taunted me with. It lurches toward me, forcing me back, forcing me to face it. Its form shifts and fractures, each face contorting into one final, monstrous visage as it attacks. I brace myself, pushing back as it hurls every horror it can muster into my mind. Memories turn against me, faces of friends and family twisted into hollow, broken forms. The walls around me distort, and I see myself as it wants me to, broken, lost, just another echo in these halls. But I refuse to look away. I feel a surge of defiance, of strength, that pushes against its assault. I can sense it pressing deeper, like a parasite latching onto its host, and I realize that the infection is already inside me, wormed into every part of my mind. I'm a part of this thing now. There's no coming back. But if it means taking this nightmare down with me, then so be it. With a shaking hand, I reach for the final switch. The fortress begins to shudder as the countdown starts, each second a beat of my heart, each beat closer to the end. The creature thrashes, desperate, lashing out with one last attempt to break me. I see visions of worlds in ruin, cities crumbling, humanity devoured by fear and darkness, every fortress a new home for the enemy, every mind a feeding ground. I feel it tearing into my thoughts, burrowing deep as I hold my ground, feeling my own identity slipping away, melding with the darkness. The fortress trembles around us, the lights flickering, walls groaning as the destruction protocol initiates. I focus on one thought, a single defiant idea, grounding myself as everything else falls away. I may be lost, but humanity will survive. My final act, my last stand, is to deny this creature the satisfaction of victory. As the walls begin to collapse, as flames lick through the structure, I feel a strange sense of calm settle over me. My memories, my thoughts, all of it blurs, blending into the roar of destruction. I feel the creature's presence weakening, thrashing, but it's too late. This place, this living nightmare, will be buried beneath the earth, sealed away forever. My last thoughts drift as the fire engulfs me, the world narrowing to a single point of clarity, a truth that hums with quiet horror. This enemy was never meant to be fought with guns or armor. It was never a battle of flesh and blood, but one of the mind. And for every mind it takes, it grows stronger, feeding on fear and breaking us from within. I can only hope, as darkness takes me, that humanity will find a way to fight back, that we won't be devoured one by one. The last thing I feel is a strange, profound peace as the fortress crumbles. The enemy will be trapped here, if only for a time, but I know it's only the beginning.